The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my mother fawn over my brother for what felt like the thousandth time that evening. The familiar scene played out in my parents' lavishly decorated living room, where family members had gathered to celebrate Marcus's latest tech venture. Our brilliant innovator. My mother Eleanor beamed, adjusting my brother's already perfect tie. The most successful entrepreneur this family has ever produced. I'm Dr. Audrey Morrison, though no one here seemed interested in using my newly earned title. I stood near the bay window, watching the celebration unfold, while processing the irony that this gathering coincided with the week I'd successfully defended my dissertation in family psychology after 8 years of rigorous research and teaching. Mom, I started, trying to keep my voice steady despite the familiar ache of being overlooked. I actually have some news to share as well. Oh, honey, just a minute. She cut me off, barely glancing my way. Harrison, come stand next to your son. Gregory, would you mind taking the picture? My father proudly clasped Marcus's shoulder, his eyes shining with unmistakable pride. That's my boy. Showing everyone how it's done in the real world, aren't you? I drained the rest of my champagne, catching my best friend Vanessa's sympathetic glance from across the room. She mouthed, "You okay?" And I managed a tight smile, both of us knowing the answer all too well. Have you heard about the new contract? Marcus's voice boomed across the room, commanding attention as effortlessly as ever. 20 million in projected revenue. The biggest deal Morrison Tech has ever landed. More applause. More congratulations. I slipped into the kitchen, seeking a moment's respite, but my cousin Lydia followed me in. I heard about your PhD defense, she said quietly. That's incredible, Audrey. I can't believe no one's mentioned it. Thanks, OID. I busied myself loading dishes into the dishwasher, needing to keep my hands occupied. 8 years of research on family dynamics, teaching, and writing. But hey, what's that compared to another tech deal, right? The irony wasn't lost on me. My research focusing on family relationships, while my own family exemplified every dysfunction I studied. It's not fair, she said, helping me with the glasses. You know, watching you pursue your dreams despite everything. It's why I decided to go back to school myself. The kitchen door swung open before I could respond. My mother rushed in, looking flustered. Audrey, where are those petty fours? I asked you to arrange them. Everyone's waiting. Mom, I actually wanted to tell you about my... Not now, sweetie. Your brother's about to give a speech about his new venture. Come on, both of you, back to the living room. In the living room. Marcus stood in the center of the room, commanding attention with the practiced ease of a tech CEO. I positioned myself near the back, next to Vanessa, who squeezed my hand in silent support. The irony of watching my brother present while my own academic accomplishments went unnoticed wasn't lost on me. It was precisely the kind of family dynamic I analyzed in my research. The Morrison name has always stood for excellence, Marcus began, raising his glass. And today, I'm proud to announce, his phone rang, cutting through his speech. The sudden interruption drew all eyes to him as he glanced at the screen. I watched with academic detachment as all the color drained from his face. Excuse me, he muttered, stepping away. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see him pacing on the patio, gesturing frantically. Years of studying family crisis patterns kicked in, and I recognized the telltale signs of someone whose carefully constructed world was crumbling. Everything okay? Our father Harrison called out, concern creeping into his usually confident voice. Marcus burst back in, his perfectly tailored suit suddenly seeming to suffocate him. I have to go, he announced, grabbing his keys. Emergency at the office. But son, the celebration. Dad started, reaching out. I said I have to go, Marcus shouted, making everyone jump. The sudden display of emotion shattered the perfectly maintained facade of success. He stormed out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Gregory, my parents' longtime friend and our family's financial advisor, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all call it a night. As guests began filtering out, I overheard my mother whisper to my father, "Harrison, did you see his face?" "Something's wrong." "I'm sure it's nothing," Dad replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "He's handled bigger crises before." I gathered my belongings, ready to escape to my apartment where student papers and research data awaited, work that actually made a difference in people's lives. My mother finally noticed me as I headed for the door. "Oh, Audrey, be a dear and help clean up before you go." "Actually, Mom," I said, straightening my shoulders like I did before presenting at academic conferences, "I've been trying to tell you all evening. I successfully defended my dissertation last week. I'm officially Dr. Morrison now, specializing in family relationship dynamics." She blinked, then patted my cheek absently. "That's nice, honey. But right now, I'm worried about your brother. Could you check on him tomorrow?" I stood there watching them huddle together, discussing Marcus's abrupt departure, my achievement already forgotten. Vanessa appeared at my side, car keys in hand. "Come on, Dr. Morrison," she said loudly enough for my parents to hear. "I'm taking you out for a proper celebration." My treat. As we walked out, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror, shoulders squared, head high, despite the familiar ache in my chest. Something about Marcus's exit felt different this time, like a shift in the family system I'd studied so often in my research. I didn't know it then, but that night would mark the beginning of a change none of us saw coming. Sometimes karma takes its time, but when it arrives with a vengeance. A hypothesis I was about to test in my own family. 3 days later, university office. I was grading papers on family conflict resolution in my office when my mother's number flashed across my phone screen. The irony wasn't lost on me. Analyzing student essays about healthy family communication while my own family dynamics served as a case study in dysfunction. "Audrey, are you sitting down?" My mother's voice trembled. "It's about Marcus." I set down my red pen next to a particularly insightful analysis of parent-child power dynamics. "What happened?" "Everything's gone. The company. It's bankrupt. He took risks. Massive risks. The investors are threatening legal action." She broke into sobs. "Your father's beside himself." The news shouldn't have given me satisfaction, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Years of studying emotional responses in family crisis situations hadn't made me immune to my own complex feelings. "Where's Marcus now?" He's not answering our calls." "Your father and we need help." Of course they did. I leaned back in my chair, my eyes drifting to the framed degrees on my wall, degrees they'd barely acknowledged. "What kind of help, Mom?" "Financial," she whispered, as if the word itself was shameful. "We put everything into his business. Our retirement fund, the house equity, everything." My grip tightened on my desk. "Are you telling me you mortgaged the house to fund his tech ventures?" "He promised it was foolproof," she defended, her voice rising with desperation. "He showed us the projections, the plans." A knock at my office door interrupted us. Dr. Chen, my department head, poked her head in to remind me about the upcoming symposium on family trauma, but I waved her away. "How much?" I asked my mother. The number she quoted made me glad I was following the first rule of delivering bad news. Always have the recipient seated. "We wouldn't ask," she added quickly, "but you're the only one with a stable, what do you call it, tenure track position." "Mom, I'm a university lecturer with a PhD in family psychology, remember? The achievement you couldn't spare 5 minutes to acknowledge last week?" Silence stretched between us. heavy with years of unspoken hurt. Then, Audrey, please. We're desperate. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. 12-year-old me winning the state science fair with a project on family communication patterns, only to have my parents skip the ceremony for Marcus's tech club presentation. 16-year-old me earning a full academic scholarship, overshadowed by Marcus's first app development. 25-year-old me completing my master's degree while my parents bragged about Marcus's startup funding. I'll think about it, I said finally, my academic training kicking in as I added, but I want to be clear, I'll think about it. University Cafe. Later that day. I hung up and immediately called Vanessa. 20 minutes later, we sat in the campus cafe beneath the psychology department, my untouched coffee growing cold as students hurried past the windows, their backpacks heavy with the same textbooks I'd once studied. They're finally reaping what they sowed, Vanessa said, stirring her tea methodically, a habit I'd observed in her throughout our years of friendship, especially when she was thinking through a legal strategy. You don't owe them anything, Dr. Morrison. I know. But I watched a group of students gathering around a table, their animated discussion about family therapy theories drifting through the open window. They're still my parents. Parents who never supported my research, who dismissed my academic achievements, who, I smiled grimly, who now need my help. The kind of situational irony I lecture about in family systems theory. My phone buzzed. A text from Gregory. Heard about Marcus. Board meeting records show he falsified projections. This is bigger than bankruptcy. Potential securities fraud. Oh God, I muttered, showing Vanessa the message. She read it, her legal expertise immediately evident in her furrowed brow. This could mean criminal charges. The SEC doesn't take kindly to fraudulent reporting. Another text came through, this time from Lydia. Just heard the news. Are you okay? Your research helped me understand my own family dynamics. Can we talk? I texted back, suggesting dinner tonight. Then I turned to Vanessa, an idea forming, one that aligned perfectly with my academic understanding of family crisis intervention. What if, I began slowly, what if I could use this situation to create a therapeutic breakthrough? Really change things? Vanessa leaned forward, her legal mind clearly intrigued. I'm listening. They want my help. Fine, but this time it comes with conditions. I pulled out my notebook, the one I usually used for research notes on family intervention strategies. They've spent years dismissing my work, my choices. Maybe it's time for a practical application of my research on family recognition patterns. What are you thinking? A family reunion, but structured more like a therapeutic intervention, where they'll have to publicly acknowledge their patterns of behavior. I started writing rapidly, years of academic research flowing into practical application. They'll have to address their favoritism, their dismissal of educational achievement, everything. That's actually brilliant, Vanessa grinned. Brutal, but brilliant. Like a case study come to life. I'll help them, but only after they understand what it feels like to be truly seen. It's exactly what I teach my students about family system restructuring. My phone rang again. Dad this time. I let it go to voicemail, already formulating my intervention strategy. Are you sure about this? Vanessa asked. It could backfire. Family systems can be unpredictable under stress, as you often point out in your lectures. At the University Cafe, continued. I thought about my students, especially the young women who came to my office hours seeking advice about pursuing their academic dreams despite family pressure. I thought about Lydia, inspired to return to school because of my research on family influence patterns. I'm sure, I said, my voice carrying the same confidence I used when presenting at academic conferences. It's time they understood that success isn't just about profit margins and tech startups. It's about persistence, dedication, and staying true to yourself despite systemic family pressure. I picked up my phone to call my mother back, my hands steady with professional purpose. The intervention plan was taking shape in my mind, clear and precise as any research methodology I'd ever developed. Phone call. A family reunion? My mother's voice crackled through the speakerphone. Audrey, we need help now, not a party. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by my support system. Vanessa with her legal pad, Gregory with his financial documents, and Lydia with her notebook. It's not just a party, Mom. Consider it a structured family intervention. I don't understand. Let me be clear, I said, drawing strength from Vanessa's encouraging nod. I'll help with the financial situation, but first you and Dad will host a family reunion. During it, you'll both publicly address your patterns of favoritism toward Marcus and your dismissal of academic achievement. The silence that followed was deafening, a textbook response to confrontational family therapy. You can't be serious, Dad's voice cut in. They must have been on speakerphone, too. This is blackmail. No, this is accountability. I kept my voice steady, using the same tone I used when guiding students through difficult family discussions. You want my help? These are my terms. Consider it a practical application of family systems theory. But what about your brother? Mom pleaded. This would humiliate him. Marcus humiliated himself, Gregory spoke up, shuffling through his papers. And from what I've seen of the company records, he's fortunate if embarrassment is all he faces. The sect takes securities fraud very seriously. Gregory, Mom sounded betrayed. You're part of this? I've watched for years as you dismissed your daughter's incredible academic achievements, he replied. Maybe it's time for some honest reflection on family dynamics. Lydia leaned toward the phone. Aunt Eleanor, Uncle Harrison, do you realize Audrey's research has inspired so many of us? Her work on family influence patterns is why I went back to college. While you were busy praising Marcus's latest venture, your daughter was quietly changing lives through her academic contributions. Phone call continued. We never meant to. Mom's voice wavered with the characteristic uncertainty I often observed in family therapy sessions. To what? I pressed, applying the direct confrontation technique I taught in my advanced family psychology seminars. To make me feel my research was worthless. To treat my PhD like a hobby? To dismiss 20 years of academic dedication? That's not fair, Dad protested weakly. No, what's not fair is mortgaging your future on Marcus's empty promises while treating my academic career like an afterthought. But I'm offering you a chance to rectify these patterns. My voice carried the authority I'd developed through years of academic research and teaching. Vanessa slid a legal pad across the table. She'd already drafted a basic agreement, always the prepared lawyer. Her thoroughness reminded me of our graduate school days, when we'd support each other through late-night study sessions. The reunion will be in 2 weeks, I continued, outlining the intervention timeline. I'll handle the arrangements. All you have to do is show up and acknowledge the family dynamics I've been studying for years. 2 weeks, Mom gasped. That's too soon. Your creditors won't wait much longer than that, Gregory reminded them gently, his financial expertise evident. The SEC investigation timeline alone. The silence stretched again. I could almost visualize them exchanging looks, weighing their options just as I'd seen countless families do in my research videos. What exactly would we need to say? Dad finally asked, his resistance beginning to crack. The truth. About how you've treated me compared to Marcus. About dismissing my academic achievements. About the constant favoritism. In front of everyone. Think of it as a case study in family recognition patterns. In front of everyone? Mom's voice was small. Lydia squeezed my hand under the table as we waited for their response, her gesture reminding me of the ripple effects my research had created. And if we do this, Dad said slowly, you'll help us? Yes. I'll help restructure your debt and set up a payment plan. But only after the reunion. Consider it a practical exercise in family system restructuring. More silence. Then Mom cleared her throat. We'll do it. After ending the call, I slumped in my chair, emotionally drained despite my professional training. Vanessa immediately poured wine for everyone. You did it, she said, raising her glass. A perfect application of your research on family intervention strategies. Evening. Dining room. They actually agreed, Lydia marveled, taking a sip of her wine. Your theories about family crisis points, creating opportunities for change, are proving true in real time. Desperate times, Gregory reminded us, reviewing his notes. But that doesn't make this intervention any less significant. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Mom told me what you're doing. Your family psychology expertise at work. We need to talk. He finally surfaces, Vanessa muttered, reading over my shoulder, her legal instincts clearly on alert. I typed back. Tomorrow. My office. 2 p.m. The same time slot I reserve for student consultations on family conflicts. Are you sure you want to meet him alone? Lydia asked, concern evident in her voice. He's not in a position to make demands anymore. I took a long sip of wine. Besides, it's time to apply some sibling communication theories in practice. Gregory checked his watch and stood. I should go. But Audrey, what you're doing, it's not just about your parents. You're setting an example for every academic who's been told their research doesn't matter in the real world. After everyone left, I sat alone in my living room, staring at a family photo from years ago. We were all smiling, but I remembered what happened right after. Mom fussing over Marcus's tech presentation while I stood awkwardly to the side, clutching my first published research paper. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Dr. Morrison, I'm in your family dynamics class. Your lecture today about standing up to toxic family patterns really helped me. I finally told my parents I'm switching my major to psychology. Thank you. I smiled, saving the message. Tomorrow would bring confrontation with Marcus, and the reunion would undoubtedly be a complex case study in family intervention. But tonight's message reminded me why this mattered. Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs in family therapy inspire the smallest acts of bravery in others. And that made everything worth it. Next day, university office. Marcus arrived at my office looking nothing like the polished tech CEO from the family gathering. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and his usual confident stride replaced by an uncertain shuffle. As a family psychology researcher, I couldn't help but note these physical manifestations of psychological stress. You look terrible, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. The same chair where I conducted student consultations on family conflicts. Yeah, well, bankruptcy and potential criminal charges will do that to you. He slumped into the seat. What are you trying to prove with this reunion intervention, Dr. Morrison? Applying your research methods to your own family? I folded my hands on my desk, adopting the professional posture I use during therapy sessions. It's not an experiment, Marcus. It's a reckoning. Come on, Odd. They're our parents. Exactly. Our parents. Not just yours. I pulled out a faded photograph from my desk drawer, one I often used in lectures about family dynamics. Remember this? My high school graduation. You weren't there because you had a crucial investor meeting. Mom and Dad left halfway through to help you set up your first startup. He shifted uncomfortably. That was years ago. Last week, I got my PhD in family psychology, and they couldn't spare 5 minutes to acknowledge it. Nothing's changed, Marcus. It's a perfect example of persistent family behavior patterns. A student walked past my office, doing a double take at seeing the famous Marcus Morrison looking so disheveled. I quickly shut my door, maintaining the privacy this sensitive family discussion deserved. "You don't understand what I'm dealing with right now," he said, voice low. "The investors are out for blood. The SEC is investigating. And whose fault is that? You falsified projections, took ridiculous risks, and dragged our parents down with you. It's exactly the kind of high-risk behavior I study in family systems under pressure." He slammed his fist on my desk, rattling my nameplate. Dr. Audrey Morrison, PhD Associate Professor of Family Psychology. I was trying to keep the company alive. By committing fraud, I kept my voice steady, using the same tone I employed when dealing with emotional outbursts in family therapy sessions. Gregory showed me the board meeting records. University office continued. Marcus's face paled. "Gregory needs to mind his own business. Mom and Dad's retirement fund was your business. Their house was your business. You made it everyone's business. In my research, we call this the ripple effect of individual choices on family systems." He ran his hands through his unkempt hair, displaying classic signs of stress I often documented in my studies. "So this is revenge? Make them humiliate themselves in front of the whole family to punish me? No." I stood up, walking to my window overlooking the campus quad, where students hurried between classes. "This is about truth. About consequences. About years of them treating your tech failures as more valuable than my academic achievements. It's about addressing dysfunctional family patterns. You're going to destroy them. They destroyed themselves when they put all their eggs in your tech basket without even looking at my research." I turned back to face him. "Did you know Lydia went back to school because of my work? That my students write to me about finding the courage to pursue their academic dreams? That's different." "Why?" "Because it doesn't come with a stock option? Because it doesn't fit their definition of success? These are exactly the biased family value systems I study." A knock at my door interrupted us. Dr. Chen poked her head in. "Dr. Morrison, sorry to interrupt, but your guest lecture on family intervention strategies starts in 15 minutes. "Thank you," I smiled. "I'll be right there." After she left, Marcus stood up. "You've made your point. But this reunion, this intervention, it's cruel. Cruel was watching them drain their savings for your ventures while telling me my education was a waste of time. Cruel was sitting through countless family dinners, hearing about your latest startup while they ignored my publications and research on family dynamics. They love you," he protested weakly. "And now they're going to acknowledge it." I gathered my lecture materials. "The reunion is happening, Marcus. Be there or don't. For once, you're not the center of the family system." University office. Final moments. He moved to the door, then paused. "You know what's ironic? All those years, I was jealous of you. I nearly dropped my research papers." "What?" "You knew exactly what you wanted, worked for it, built something real." He laughed bitterly. "I just kept chasing bigger deals, trying to live up to their expectations. Look where that got me." Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me standing in my office with those words echoing in my head. A perfect case study in family role reversal. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. The invitations arrived. "Are you sure about this?" Another from Lydia. "Just got the reunion invite. Your theories about family confrontation are becoming reality." And one from Gregory. "SEC called. They want to interview your parents about their investments in Marcus's company." Timing couldn't be worse or better. I walked to my lecture hall, thinking about Marcus's confession. All those years of feeling academically invalidated, and he had been jealous of my clear purpose. The thought almost made me laugh. But as I set up my presentation on family dynamics and psychological validation, I realized something. This reunion wasn't just about making my parents admit their favoritism. It was about breaking a cycle I'd studied for years. My phone buzzed one more time. Vanessa, ready for tomorrow's reunion planning? Got some legal frameworks that'll make sure your family intervention stays on track. I smiled, typing back, more ready than they'll ever be. The truth was coming, whether they were ready for this case study in family dynamics or not. Next day, department conference room. I sat reviewing my notes for the reunion intervention strategy. Years of research on family systems were about to be put to the ultimate test. My phone kept buzzing with messages, relatives expressing support, former students sharing their own stories of standing up to family pressure, even a message from Marcus's holding cell. Your research on family crisis points was right all along, sis. Dr. Chen stopped by my office. Audrey, the department is fully behind you. Your real-world application of family systems theory is exactly what we need more of in academia. I nodded, grateful for the professional support. This wasn't just about my family anymore. It was about demonstrating the practical value of academic research in resolving real-world family conflicts. The reunion venue was booked, the intervention strategy planned, and my academic credentials would finally serve their most personal purpose yet, healing my own family's dynamics. The reunion, University Conference Center. The reunion venue buzzed with nervous energy as family members filed into the conference center where I usually presented my research. I stood near the entrance, greeting everyone while keeping one eye on my parents, who huddled in a corner, looking like they were attending a doctoral defense rather than a family gathering. Quite a turnout, Vanessa whispered, appearing at my side with her legal pad. I count at least 50 potential witnesses to this family systems intervention. 50 participants in this case study of family dynamics, I corrected quietly. Aunt Margaret bustled over, pulling me into a tight hug. Audrey, darling, I heard you're a doctor now. A real professor of family psychology. Why didn't your mother tell us about your academic achievements? I caught Mom's flinch from across the room. Maybe you should ask her that question, Aunt Margaret. It's a perfect example of selective family communication patterns. Gregory appeared with a glass of water for me, financial documents tucked under his arm. Your father's looking a bit pale. Should we move up the intervention timeline? Let them process their anxiety a little longer, I said, watching Dad loosen his collar for the third time in 10 minutes. My research showed that optimal breakthrough moments often required a period of psychological tension. Lydia approached with her parents. Uncle Harrison and Aunt Eleanor seemed tense, she observed. Have they prepared their acknowledgement statements? That wasn't part of the intervention protocol. Whatever they say has to be genuine for the family system to truly heal. The room grew more crowded. Second cousins I hadn't seen in years, family friends, even Dr. Chen, and several of my colleagues from the psychology department who'd supported my research through the years. Is Marcus coming? Someone asked loudly. Mom's head snapped up, hope flashing across her face. But my brother had already informed me of his decision. He sent a message, I replied. Can't attend this case study in family dysfunction. Sorry, sis. Gregory clinked his glass, calling for attention. If everyone could take their seats, we have some special presentations on family dynamics planned. University Conference Center continued. I watched my parents reluctantly make their way to the front row. Mom's hands trembled as she smoothed her skirt, a gesture I'd often analyzed in my research on anxiety manifestations in family confrontations. Dad's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching. First, Gregory continued, I'd like to acknowledge our host, Dr. Audrey Morrison, whose groundbreaking research in family psychology and recent PhD dissertation on family dynamics have contributed significantly to our understanding of modern family relationships. Applause filled the room. Several relatives looked confused, clearly hearing about my academic achievements for the first time. And now, Gregory gestured to my parents. Eleanor and Harrison would like to share their insights on family communication patterns. Mom stood up first, her legs shaking visibly as she approached the podium. The same podium where I defended my dissertation just weeks ago. She gripped it like a lifeline. Her voice cracked. The room went silent. I could hear the whir of the recording device I'd set up for my research archives. I don't know how to start, she whispered. Try applying the principles of honest family communication, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the quiet room with the same authority I used in my lectures. She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time since I'd begun my academic career. The truth is, I've been a terrible mother to Audrey. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Exactly the kind of group response I'd documented in my studies of family revelations. She glanced at Dad, who had gone completely white. We always favored Marcus. We dismissed Audrey's academic dreams, her research, her brilliant mind. We were so focused on what we thought success should look like that we failed to see the incredible scholar right in front of us. Aunt Margaret made a disapproving sound. Someone whispered, I knew it. I noticed Dr. Chen nodding approvingly. This was turning into a perfect case study of family intervention dynamics. University Conference Center, the intervention. Harrison. Mom turned to my father, her voice trembling. You need to speak too. Dad stood slowly, like each movement caused him physical pain. A classic manifestation of psychological resistance I'd often documented in my research. He didn't go to the podium, instead turning to face me directly. I was wrong, he said, his voice rough. I was so wrong, Audrey. Every time you achieved something remarkable in your academic career, I downplayed it. Every time you reached higher in your research, I questioned why. And now, he spread his hands helplessly. Now you're the successful one. The stable one. The one whose expertise we need. The irony isn't lost on me. And Marcus? I prompted, using the direct questioning technique I taught in my advanced seminars. Tell them about Marcus, I encouraged, maintaining the professional distance I'd learned was crucial in family interventions. Mom's sob cut through the room. We gave him everything. Every penny we had. Because we believed in his tech ventures. More than we believed in your academic work. And now, I finished for her. My academic training keeping my voice steady. Now you're facing bankruptcy because you bet everything on the wrong child. The silence that followed was absolute. I could feel every eye in the room darting between us, processing this public confession. Exactly the kind of group dynamic I studied. Suddenly, the back door burst open. Everyone turned to see two men in dark suits stride in, holding up badges. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, one announced. I'm with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We need to ask you some questions about your investments in your son's company. Mom swayed on her feet. Dad reached for her, but she was already crumpling toward the floor. Mom, I rushed forward, catching her before she hit the ground. Despite everything, despite all my research on emotional detachment in family therapy, she was still my mother. As chaos erupted around us, with relatives jumping up and the SEC agents approaching, I held my unconscious mother and looked at my father's devastated face. This wasn't how I'd planned the intervention to end. But then again, family systems had a way of creating their own paths to resolution. Private conference room, minutes later. She's coming around, I said, fanning my mother's face with a program from the reunion. We'd moved her to a private conference room, the same one where I usually conducted my research interviews. Mom's eyelids fluttered open. "The sec," she whispered. "They're waiting outside." "They are," Vanessa confirmed, her legal expertise evident in her tone. "And as your daughter's best friend, who happens to be a legal expert in securities fraud, I strongly advise you not to speak to them without representation." Dad paced the small room, a behavior pattern I'd seen countless times in my family crisis studies. "This is a nightmare. A complete nightmare." A knock at the door made us all jump. Gregory stepped in, closing it quickly behind him. "The agents are willing to schedule the interview for tomorrow morning. I've convinced them that today isn't optimal for a productive investigation." "Thank you," I said, still holding my mother's hand. Despite my years of studying family dynamics, the warmth of her grip still affected me deeply. "Audrey," Mom's voice was barely audible. "I'm so sorry. Not just because we need your expertise now, but truly sorry. Watching you catch me just now. After everything we've done." "Mom." "No, let me finish." She struggled to sit up. "Your father and I, we were so wrong. So terribly wrong. For years, we measured success in dollars and tech startups. But look at you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You've built something meaningful. Something lasting. While we were chasing Marcus's empty promises, you were quietly advancing our understanding of family relationships." Dad stopped pacing. "The things your students said out there before about how your research helped them understand their own family dynamics. Dr. Chen and my colleagues have documented numerous success cases," I supplied. "Yes," he said. "You'd helped dozens of families heal and grow. While we were ignoring you, you were helping others fight the same battles you fought with us." Private conference room continued. Another knock. Lydia poked her head in. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone else here to see you all." Marcus stepped into the room, looking more disheveled than he had in my office. The tech CEO persona had completely crumbled. "Son." Mom tried to stand, but I gently pushed her back down, my professional training kicking in. My brother looked worse than during our office confrontation. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expensive watch conspicuously missing, material symbols of success stripped away. "I heard what happened," he said. "Came as fast as I could." He turned to our parents. "The SEC investigation. It's my fault. All of it. The falsified projections. The manipulated data. I did it all." "We know," Dad said quietly. "You knew?" Marcus's eyes widened, a classic reaction I'd often observed in family revelation scenarios. "We suspected," Mom admitted. "But we wanted so badly to believe in your tech success that we ignored the signs. Just like we ignored Audrey's academic achievements because they didn't fit our narrow view of success." "I have to turn myself in," Marcus announced. "It's the only way to possibly reduce any charges against you both as investors." My sister's research on family accountability helped me understand that. The room fell silent. I watched my brother, the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong, finally embracing the concept of personal responsibility I'd written about in my dissertation. "There's something else," he continued, pulling out his phone. "I recorded a confession. About everything. The fraud, the fake projections, how I pressured you both to invest. I'm sending copies to the SEC and the prosecutor's office." "Marcus, no," Mom started. "Yes, Mom. For once in my life, I'm going to follow my sister's example of ethical behavior." He looked at me. "Audrey, I know it's too late, but I'm proud of you. You're the strongest person I know." Private conference room. Final moments. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. maintaining the professional composure I developed through years of conducting family therapy sessions. It's not too late for honesty, Marcus. That's what my research has always shown. Family healing can begin at any point. Gregory cleared his throat. The guests are waiting to understand what's happening. I'll tell them, I said, standing and straightening my blazer. No, Mom grabbed my hand. We'll tell them. Your father and I. The whole truth this time. About our favoritism, about Marcus's business, about how we failed to recognize the value of your academic work. No more hiding. Dad nodded. We owe you that much, and more. Your research on family recognition patterns was right all along. As they prepared to face the crowd again, Vanessa pulled me aside. Are you okay? As both a friend and legal counsel, I watched my family, my broken, flawed, finally honest family, gathering their courage. I think I will be. This isn't how I planned the intervention, but maybe it's better. My research has shown that real change doesn't come from carefully scripted confrontations. Dr. Morrison, Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. Your cousin Lydia is out there telling everyone how your work on family dynamics inspired her to return to school. There are others who want to share similar stories of how your research has impacted their lives. I smiled. Tell them to wait. My parents have something to say first. As we filed back into the main hall, I caught sight of my degrees hanging on my office wall in my mind's eye. They weren't just academic achievements anymore. They were proof that sometimes the greatest success comes from understanding and healing family systems, even when those who should believe in your work don't. And sometimes, just sometimes, they finally learn to see its value. Next morning, Vanessa's law office. I sat in Vanessa's modern downtown office, watching my parents sign paperwork for their legal representation. The SEC interview was scheduled for 2 hours from now. The morning sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the family dynamics textbooks I'd brought along as reference material. Just remember, Vanessa explained, sliding another documents across her desk. Stick to the facts. Marcus's confession helps your case, but we need to establish that you were victims of his fraud, not willing participants. This follows the family crisis intervention patterns Dr. Morrison has documented. Mom's hands shook as she signed. Will they arrest him? Most likely, Vanessa said gently. But his cooperation will work in his favor. It's a classic example of what Audrey calls restorative justice in family systems. A knock at the door interrupted us. Gregory entered, holding a stack of financial documents. I've gone through everything. The good news is, there's a clear paper trail showing Marcus acted alone in falsifying the projections. And the bad news? Dad asked. You're still looking at significant financial losses. The house, the retirement accounts. I cleared my throat. That's where my academic position comes in. Everyone turned to look at me. I've spoken with the university. I can take out a loan against my tenure position. It won't cover everything, but it'll keep you from losing the house. Audrey, no, Mom protested. After everything we've done. I'm not doing it for free, I interrupted, applying my research on boundary setting in family relationships. I have conditions. Dad straightened in his chair. Name them. Law office continued. First, you'll both attend regular therapy sessions. Not just as clients, but as case studies for my Advanced Family Dynamics seminar. We'll work through your favoritism issues and repair our relationship using evidence-based methods. They nodded, exchanging glances. Second, you'll start attending my guest lectures at the university. I want you to really understand my research, not just dismiss it as playing teacher. You'll see firsthand how family dynamics theory applies to real situations. Of course, Mom whispered, dabbing at her eyes. And third, I pulled out a brochure from my briefcase. There's a mentorship program I run for first-generation college students studying family psychology. Many of them face the same biases I did from their families. You're going to help me expand it. Help you? Dad looked confused. By sharing your story about how you learned the hard way that success isn't just about profit margins, about how you almost lost everything by betting on the wrong dreams. Your experience will be invaluable for my research on family value systems. Before they could respond, Lydia burst into the office, out of breath. Turn on the news. Quick! Gregory grabbed the remote, flicking on Vanessa's office TV. There was Marcus, being led out of the FBI building in handcuffs. The headlines scrolled beneath. Tech CEO surrenders to authorities, confesses to investment fraud. Oh God. Mom covered her face. Oh wait, Lydia pointed. Look who's with him. The camera panned to show Marcus's lawyer speaking to reporters. My client has taken full responsibility for his actions and is cooperating fully with authorities. He wants to make it clear that his investors, including his parents, were victims of his deception. He credits his sister's research on family accountability for his decision to come forward. He really did it, Dad murmured. He's protecting us. Maybe he learned something from my work on family crisis intervention too, I said quietly. Law office. Final moments. My phone buzzed. A message from a current student. Dr. Morrison, your research on family dynamics helped me understand my own family's struggles with achievement recognition. 3 of us just changed our majors to psychology to follow your path. You're changing lives. Kira checked her watch. We should head to the SEC office. Are you coming, Audrey? Actually, I stood up, gathering my research materials. I have a class to teach. Family dynamics and personal growth seems particularly relevant today. Mom caught my hand before I could leave. We'll make this right, Audrey. Not just the money, but everything. We're finally seeing the value of your work. Really seeing it. I know, Mom. I squeezed her hand. That's why I'm helping. Because my research shows that growth is possible, even after decades of dysfunctional patterns. As I walked across campus to my lecture hall, my phone kept buzzing with messages, relatives expressing support, students sharing their own stories of standing up to family pressure, even a message from Marcus's holding cell. Your research on family crisis intervention was right all along, sis. I'm living proof. I stepped into my classroom, where eager faces looked up at me. Today's topic felt different. Personal. Real. Good morning, I began, writing on the board. When family dynamics shift, the power of truth and consequences in family systems. A student raised her hand. Dr. Morrison, we saw the news about your brother. And we heard about what happened at your family reunion. Would you share your case study with us? I looked at their faces, young researchers in training, each one carrying their own family dynamics to understand. My personal experience would now become part of my teaching curriculum, a real-world application of the theories we studied. Yes, I said, setting down my notes. Because sometimes the most important research comes from our hardest moments. And sometimes the greatest act of love is holding family systems accountable for their patterns. The room fell silent, ready to learn from a case study that was still unfolding, but finally moving in the direction that my research had always indicated was possible, toward understanding, growth, and healing.